This episode of Sessler Something is brought to you by Full Sail University. All right, everyone, as you can see, the beard is growing fuller. It's because it's review season, and I honestly do not have the time to make it to the barber to get trimmed and to get shorn. So please forgive me for the next few weeks, as I might go a little bit kind of wild man in front of all of you. And it's for good cause, because, I'm reviewing games. One of them will be at the end of the week, and that is Batman Arkham Origins. But let's talk first about some news that came out last week, which was that Watch Dogs and then Drive Club, the Sony driving game exclusive for the PlayStation 4, had been pushed into the early part of 2014. The Watch Dogs definitely came as a shock and a surprise. Ubisoft had so cleverly introduced the game 2 years ago before the announcement of the new consoles, and kind of coyly really kind of presented what was a next-gen game without having to acknowledge the next generation. And as a result, really kind of owned mindshare on what that definitive game for the new consoles was going to be. So yes, it was definitely a surprise and a disappointment. It was a game that I was quite looking forward to playing. I think the professional in me is more than happy to have one less open world game that I have to get my head wrapped around when a whole bunch of other games are coming out. But the gamer, the consumer in me was like, oh, I was kind of looking forward to that game. And there's been a lot of talk about what the impact of the loss of Watch Dogs, and to a lesser extent Drive Club, will have on the interest for the Xbox One and for the PlayStation 4. And I've been of two minds. At first I thought it was going to be pretty dramatic, because Watch Dogs was kind of like that all-purpose game, that one that had a general appeal. It was going to be on both consoles, and it looked really good and was doing new things. But the more I thought about it, I really started to question why we want to buy a new console when it launches. I have an excuse. I feel a professional obligation to have this thing in my home so I can play it. But for the average consumer, no one gets that excited about launch games. The Xbox 360, yeah, it had Call of Duty 2. It also had King Kong. It also had Cameo. The GameCube, it had Luigi's Mansion, and it had Wave Race. Traditionally, you're not putting out your best stuff when the console launches, because you only have that many consoles that are in people's homes. Yet there's always that sense of, I need to have it, I'm going to pre-order it. And of course, I've been admonishing everyone to kind of put off pre-ordering a console until we got all the information. And now I have to even wonder, what is the interest? And I don't think it is necessarily like there's this need because the games are available. Killzone should be fine, Dead Rising 3 should be fine, but does that justify paying the top dollar price for a brand new console? And I think it does come down to something I know is in myself, and I see it in a lot of my friends and my colleagues, which is that need to have the new thing first. That once it's available, it's like adult Pokemon. Hold on, there's a new piece of technology out there. I want to have it in my home. I want my friends to come over and I want them to see it. And then we'll put on a game that may not be all that fun, but it looks really, really good and I can show it off. It is a strange primal need and a primal desire. And it's interesting to see how that sort of changes over into this kind of staking a claim for your corporate brand loyalty. A lot of the interest, and I would have to say, around these consoles is in the ephemera, in the idea of the console, the idea of Microsoft and Sony and what they're doing with it, and kind of like, saying, hey, I'm on Team X or I'm on Team Y, because the more I think about it, it doesn't make any sense. And probably what I'm going to miss the most about there not being Watch Dogs was the challenge of which system I was going to play it on. All right, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, Full Sail University. You love to play video games, but have you thought about creating them? Whether you're interested in programming, art and animation, story creation, or even producing games, there is a game degree program at Full Sail University to fit your needs. The Full Sail campus is equipped with professional level game studios and labs where you can work with teams of your peers to create a playable game from start to finish. Now, if you're looking for an online program, Full Sail's Game Art and Game Design bachelor's degree programs utilize Full Sail's immersive education platforms. And just so you know, Full Sail grads have worked on titles such as Red Dead Redemption, the Call of Duty series, and much more. Visit fullsail.edu/something to learn more. So, as I said earlier, my review of Batman Arkham Origins is coming out at the end of the week. It's coming on Friday. And, as a result, it got me thinking about sort of the challenges we've always seen of superheroes and video games. Batman is that rare and wondrous exception with both Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, where it worked. It felt true to the legacy of the character, and it was a really, really good game in its own right. Something that is very, very elusive, even in the best of opportunities when it comes to comic book characters. And it seems so strange because it sounds like a peanut butter and chocolate type mix. It's like, well, that's a fantasy world where you do things that are extraordinary and can't happen in real life, and that's what video games are supposed to be allowing us to do. Yet it doesn't seem to work. There's many factors at play there. Sometimes the cost of the license is so great that you don't actually get to put all that money into the making of a quality game. But I also think that there's the type of fantasy that exists on a comic book page. And let's use Superman as an example. You know, he can fly and he does these things, but really a lot of the interest that happens in the comic book is the drama. But when you put it into a game, it has to be the action. And a lot of those actions look fine on the page because it implies what's happening. And when you suddenly have to put it into the practical reality of a video game space, it doesn't always bear itself out as something that is enjoyable and fun to play. And you know, we do read the comic books for those story arcs, and that's something that should fit very, very well. And in the case of especially the Batman games, you can really see some great story there. But it's trying to justify that story with those interstitials. You know, how much can you do with heat vision? How much can you do with Aquaman underneath the water? How much, you know, even in the case of Deadpool, which was a fairly passable game, how do you try to distinguish that and not let it just turn into an absolute shooter? I think the idea that they should be good might be a misunderstanding. And that, you know, once again, as we've seen with books or movies turning into video games and vice versa, something that works really, really well on the page works well on the page, and that doesn't mean it's always going to work well as a video game. And on that note, it's kind of sad because I used to talk endlessly about comic books with Max Scoville here as one of my kind of great joys doing that, and he has decided to depart us. We have a link to his blog post explaining his decision and what his ambitions and glories are going forward, especially with his writing and his podcast, The Comedy Button. I would just right now like to personally thank him for the time I got to spend in his company. It was thoroughly entertaining, and he taught me quite a bit, and I wish him all the best in the future to come.